Did you see what she's wearing? Yeah, wearing a tracksuit to open house school day is so thoughtless. I'm guessing both the husband and wife could be unemployed? Poor kid. Even if they are unemployed, at the very least they should have worn something other than a tracksuit for the open house. It's embarrassing for an adult. As soon as I entered the classroom, I could see the other parents whispering about my attire. I don't care. I don't care. I kept repeating this to myself as I walked on. Once they knew who I really was, they wouldn't have anything to say. My name is Lisa Hamilton, and I'm 39 years old. I live with my husband and daughter. Our daughter, Emily, started elementary school this September. I can't believe how fast time has flown by since Emily was just a baby. My husband and I married in our early 20s, but we were not blessed with a child for a long time. Emily is the child we were finally able to have after overcoming painful infertility treatments. Though it's quite common for women to give birth in their 30s in cities, in the area where we live, most women give birth in their 20s. I live in a place that is not my hometown, so I don't have many acquaintances. I'm significantly older than Emily's friends' mothers. Making friends of my own age in this environment was hard enough, let alone making mom friends. But as long as Emily is having fun at school, that's all that matters to me. One evening, while I was preparing dinner, Emily handed me a piece of paper. Here, I got this at school today. Mr. Adams told me to give this to either Dad or Mom. Is that so? Thanks, honey. It was a notice about the open house at school. The date was set for 3 weeks later at 2 p.m. Checking my schedule, it happened to be on my day off. I'll be coming to the open house, Emily. I'm looking forward to it. Really? Mom, yay! Emily was so happy that she was hopping around. I've tried my best to be involved in raising her, but due to my busy work schedule, I was hardly able to participate in any preschool events. This open house will be the first school event for Emily. I would love to take videos and pictures, even if it's probably against the rules. Then, I noticed a handwritten comment from the teacher at the bottom of the notice. Apparently, there are various preparations that need to be done before the open house. I pinned the notice to the corkboard and resumed cooking dinner, and before I knew it, the day of the open house had arrived. I put on the guest slippers and headed for Emily's classroom. All the other moms had perfect hair and makeup, wearing beautiful clothes. As for me, I was in a tracksuit. My hair was in a ponytail, and I didn't have any makeup on. I had plans for the day off, but a sudden change required me to go to work, so I rushed over without having time to dress up properly. I was more comfortable this way, and considering today's circumstances, it worked out better for me. As I opened the door to the classroom and entered, I made eye contact with Emily. Emily smiled joyfully. The teacher wasn't there yet. As I walked towards a spot where I could see Emily's seat clearly, I could feel the other parents staring at me. Probably it was my attire that was causing this. I don't care, I told myself and moved forward. The classroom walls were adorned with class goals, a list of the school lunch menu, and children's drawings. It was a sight almost identical to what I used to see in elementary school. Parents were conversing with their close friends. Due to the small classroom, I couldn't help but overhear the conversation of Miss Martin and Miss Taylor, who were nearby. I and both of them are members of the PTA. Did you see her clothes? Yeah, wearing a tracksuit on Parent-Teacher Day is absurd. Maybe she's a bum. Or her husband too. I feel sorry for the kid. Even if she is a bum, she should wear something other than a tracksuit to Parent-Teacher Day. It's embarrassing for a grown adult. Miss Taylor, keep your voice down. She might hear you. Miss Martin, you're too worried. I don't care what a bum thinks about me. I didn't say anything wrong. Although their insults naturally hurt my feelings, I chose to ignore them. If I reacted here and started an argument with them, it would sour the atmosphere in the whole classroom. Above all, I didn't want Emily to see the ugly side of adults. Just a little time left until the start of the class. The class teacher, Mr. Adams, hadn't arrived yet. The bell rang, and the scattered children began to take their seats. Emily, who had been playing with her friends, also took her seat and turned around to wave at me with a smile. Seeing her smile, I felt I could persevere no matter what. At the same time as the chime for the start of class, Mr. Adams appeared. Then, Miss Taylor walked through the gap between the children's desks towards Mr. Adams and said, Mr. Adams, do you have a moment before class starts?
Miss Taylor, what can I do for you?
It's difficult to talk about in the classroom. Can we talk in the hallway? Even though Miss Taylor and Mr. Adams went out to the hallway, their conversation was still clearly audible. Did you see that one of the parents is wearing a tracksuit? She looks like a bum.
No, I was preoccupied with preparing for the lesson and just entered the classroom.
That's her, standing at the back. Miss Taylor stuck her face out from the hallway, pointed at me, and continued. I understand there's no dress code for Parent-Teacher Day, but any person with common sense wouldn't choose to wear a tracksuit. It seems she has a considerable distaste for me. Mr. Adams, looking in the direction pointed out by Miss Taylor, seemed to have noticed me. Mr. Adams, are you listening to me? At any rate, as a PTA member and personally, I cannot accept a parent coming to Parent-Teacher Day in a tracksuit. Can you tell her to go home? Mr. Adams froze for a moment after looking at me, then turned pale and said,
Miss Taylor, she's not a bum. She's a businesswoman with annual sales of $10 million.
The words 10 million caused the children to react instantly, and the classroom began to stir. In contrast to the children, the parents remained indifferent. In fact, many of them were smirking. Mr. Adams, the teacher, glanced at me awkwardly. Mr. Adams, isn't there a mistake? The person in the sweatshirt hardly seems like a CEO making $10 million in annual sales.
Miss Taylor, please believe me. She's truly a respectable businesswoman.
Miss Taylor wouldn't listen and kept firing back her opinions at Mr. Adams. Miss Martin, who had been watching the scene with an anxious look, left for the corridor, probably to back up Miss Taylor. The kids, seeing that the lesson wouldn't start, got up from their seats and began to play. The parents were telling off the kids in place of the teacher. It was a shame that on the precious open class day, time was wasted on such trivial matters. I gathered my courage and called out to the teacher in a loud voice, Mr. Adams? He popped out his surprised face from the corridor and looked at me. If we continue like this, we won't have any time for the lesson. Could you start the lesson for the kids?
You're right. My apologies. Miss Taylor, let's talk after the lesson.
Miss Taylor seemed unconvinced, but reluctantly returned to the classroom.
Everyone, please take your seats. Let's begin the class. My apologies to the parents for making you wait. Now, our class leader Emily, could you lead us in starting the lesson?
Finally, the lesson started.
You all are expecting me to teach, right? Actually, I won't be giving the lesson today.
All the kids cried out in surprise, asking why. Even my daughter Emily looked at the teacher curiously.
That's because we have a special guest lecturer. Oh, by guest lecturer, I mean a special teacher.
The expressions of the kids and the parents changed to excited ones.
Let me introduce our guest lecturer, Miss Hamilton. Miss Hamilton, please come this way.
I started walking towards the podium. Seeing the completely surprised face of my daughter Emily, I couldn't help but laugh. From the back, I could hear the parents murmuring. I wrote my name in large letters on the blackboard and began to introduce myself. Hello everyone, I'm Lisa Hamilton, Emily's mom, sitting over there. Anyone seen the gym next to Central Park? I run that gym along with 5 others. Explaining my job to first graders in simple terms was a challenging task. Even though I had prepared beforehand, I ended up using words the kids might not understand. But thanks to their candid reactions, I was able to quickly revise the complex words into simpler ones. I told them that I'm the COO and my husband is the CEO. I spoke about the trainers, sports doctors, and other professionals we've produced from our gyms. Then a kid sitting in the front row asked why I decided to run a gym. My brother used to be a soccer player. He was very good, but he had a serious injury. Immediately the kids asked why. His soccer coach taught him the wrong training methods. Because of that, he broke both his kneecaps. After that, my brother had to quit playing soccer. The kids reacted differently, some expressing sympathy for my brother, some expressing anger at the coach, others inquiring about what a kneecap is. That's why I wanted to give the right knowledge to those aspiring to be coaches. My gym is not just for training, but also for learning. After finishing my introduction, I could finally move on to the main topic. Kids, do you know why I'm wearing a tracksuit? The classroom fell silent, as if it was a scene in a play. I was told to bring the clothes I wear for work by Mr. Adams. Do you understand what that means? Well then, let's start with some simple exercises that we can do standing up. I had the children stand up, and while explaining about joints and muscles, we moved our bodies together. Make sure you don't bump your arm into your friend next to you. The children happily participated in the exercise. The parents watching from the back observed warmly. Raise your hand if your arms are getting tired. Most of the children raised their hands. Congratulations to those who just raised their hands. Being tired is evidence that you've been training correctly. I sat the children down and talked about the importance of understanding our bodies and the benefits of physical activity. Everyone listened attentively to what I had to say. Some even took notes in their notebooks. Perhaps that child might become a trainer in the future. I was relieved to finish the class just in time.
Thank you, Miss Hamilton. Everyone, let's say thanks. Ready, go.
The children all said thank you and applauded for me. I felt incredibly proud. Although I had experience as a lecturer at workshops, this was my first time teaching a class to children in school, and I was nervous, but it seems to have been a success. After the class, a few children ran up to me. Their eyes were shining as they said, "Emily's mom, you're amazing, so cool." Hearing the sincere feelings from the children made me happy. Emily also seemed to be in a good mood, receiving admiring glances from her classmates. In the past, juggling work and parenting was harder than I had imagined, and I thought about quitting my job several times. Most mothers around me were part-time workers or housewives, but I wanted to show Emily that her mom was working hard, and I worked with that mindset. It felt like my efforts had been rewarded. My decision was not wrong. While erasing my name written on the blackboard, I overheard a conversation between Miss Taylor and her son. "Mom, it was noisy before the class started. I could hear your voice throughout the classroom. You were bad-mouthing Emily's mom, weren't you?" "I'm sorry. Mom didn't know about today's class content." "Why can't you wear a tracksuit?" "It's not that you can't wear a tracksuit, but none of the other moms or dads in the classroom were wearing one, were they?" "But Mom, you always told me not to judge people by their appearance, right?" Miss Taylor stammered, trying to laugh it off. "I don't want to be like you, Mom." Kevin spat out a snide remark and left the classroom. Children can be so innocent and cruel. Miss Martin was comforting Miss Taylor, who didn't have the energy to chase after Kevin. They both nodded at me without saying a word and left the place.
Miss Hamilton, thank you so much for today. It was a wonderful class. Inviting you as a special lecturer was the right choice.
No, I'm the one who should be thanking you for this valuable experience.
I apologize if I caused any discomfort by not informing the parents about the class content in advance.
Don't worry about it. You've worked hard too, Mr. Adams. It's tough dealing with all kinds of parents.
Well, dealing with parents is part of a teacher's job.
I had a little chat with Emily and then left the classroom. Near the school gate, a woman approached me. I didn't remember her at all initially, but she turned out to be the mother of a girl in Emily's class, and it seems she had been watching my lecture earlier. She was a bit excited and praised my teaching style. Coincidentally, our homes were close by, so we ended up walking home together. During our conversation, I found a surprising number of things in common with her. Believe it or not, our hobbies, favorite foods, even our hometowns were the same. We quickly hit it off and exchanged contact information before parting ways for the day. When I got home and told Emily about this, it turned out that the kids had been friends even before their moms got to know each other. Since then, our families have become close. We're planning to have a barbecue at her place next week. Apparently, she's inviting other mom friends and their families too. I might be able to make some new mom friends as well. Unable to contain my excitement, I started searching for local craft beers to bring to the barbecue on my computer when Emily tapped me on the shoulder. "What's up?" Emily just smiled without answering. "What? Why are you smiling?" Bashfully, Emily gave me the most precious words. "Mom, you're the best mom ever." "What?" Out of the blue like that? But thank you. That makes me so happy. "I love you, Mom." With her little arms, Emily gave me a tight hug. "I love you too, Emily." Holding back tears, I patted Emily's head. Thanks to Emily, I felt recharged. That night, as I thought about the upcoming barbecue next week, I fell asleep savoring the happiness of the day.
Fiancé, the one you've promised to marry. Once upon a time, I had a fiancé, but I didn't end up sharing my life with him because of my sister. I was in deep despair back then, but now I found new happiness. And I want to show my sister and my ex-fiancé just that. My name is Catherine. I'm not particularly beautiful, just an average office worker. But back then, I had a man who had promised to marry me. His name was Bob. Bob was a handsome guy, working in a reputable company, the so-called hottie. We were really happy back then. Happiness that I thought would last forever. But the cruel reality dealt me a harsh hand. I couldn't get married to Bob. The cause of it all was my sister. My sister's name is Sophie. Sophie has always been interested in fashion, and she is still as fashion conscious as ever. In fact, Sophie was always much more conscious about her appearance than me, and was always pretty. Therefore, Sophie had been popular with boys since she was in middle school. She even once was an amateur model for a fashion magazine. Because of that, Sophie dreamed of becoming a model. When I graduated from college and was working at a regular company, I was once invited to dinner by a business partner. That partner was Bob. One day, after having connected with Bob a few times and occasionally going out for meals together, something unexpected happened. That day, Bob invited me for dinner after work. Naturally, I had no reason to refuse and went out for the meal. On the way back that evening, Bob confessed his feelings for me. I was surprised at his sudden confession, but I also had feelings for him, so we ended up dating. After a year of dating, Bob proposed to me, and I was overjoyed. Of course I accepted his proposal. A few days later, Bob and I visited my parents' house to report our engagement and to greet them. My parents were, of course, thrilled. We talked about wedding plans, and I was very happy. But not everyone was pleased. That person was my younger sister, Sophie. Sophie was surprised to learn that I was getting married and was even more taken aback when she saw who I was marrying. Sophie, who was more attractive and had been asked out by various men, always looked down on me, who had little romantic experience. I don't want my embarrassing sister to be known to my friends. That was what Sophie would always say. The sister who she deemed uncool was getting married before her, and to a successful man from a famous company. This seemed to hurt Sophie's pride even more. But I was completely oblivious to Sophie's feelings. I should have noticed her attitude at this point. One day, Sophie asked, "If you're going to be my brother-in-law, can we exchange contact information?" Bob and I saw no reason to refuse, so we readily agreed. Since I was about to leave my job, there were many days when I had to stay late for the transition process. Then on a day when my parents were out of town, Sophie took a certain action. In hindsight, it was probably a plan she had thought of from the beginning. Once I retired, I planned to move away from my family home and start living with Bob. She probably wanted to execute her plan while I was still at home. Sophie first called Bob to our house. "Bob, my sister suddenly came home sick. Our parents are out of town and I'm feeling uneasy being alone. Could you come over?" Sophie lied, saying that I had cut my work short due to a sudden illness. Bob, who was just about to head home from work, hurried to our house without suspecting a thing. I rushed over because I heard Catherine was ill. Where is she? Of course, I wasn't there. It was only natural for Bob to think so. However, Sophie confessed, "I'm sorry, Bob. I lied to you. My sister isn't sick. She's still at work." Upon hearing this, Bob didn't get angry at Sophie, but instead asked, "Why would you lie like that?" "I just really needed to talk to you, Bob," Sophie started to explain. Having wrapped up work, I reached home and was surprised. It was because Bob was there. Yet, without really questioning it, I cheerfully said, "Oh, you're here." Later, I was about to experience the most intense despair and sadness I've ever felt in my life. "Catherine, I'm sorry. I want to break up." It was sudden. I was unable to comprehend the meaning of his words immediately. "What? You're kidding, right? Break up? What do you mean?" Just as I was pressing Bob for answers, Sophie showed up. "Catherine, actually, I'm dating Sophie. I'm sorry, Catherine. I've fallen in love with Sophie, more than you." Still confused and in disbelief, Sophie then said to me, "I'm sorry, but Bob has decided to marry me." I was totally lost. Then Sophie continued, "You might not want to attend our wedding ceremony, but do come to the reception, won't you?" All I could do after that was cry. Sophie had taken away my fiancé. I was discarded. Both my dad and mom were extremely worried. For a while, I couldn't leave my room. Since I'd already quit my job, there was nothing I could do. I received several messages from my coworkers asking when the wedding was. I told them it was going to be a simple ceremony with just family. Months later, I found myself in a strange place. Here, I'd start my life anew. I wanted to be happy again. Truly happy this time. After breaking up with Bob, I was holed up for a while, but a certain emotion was born within me. Why do I have to suffer like this? Forget that guy, and let's start over. Things progressed rapidly from there. I talked to my dad and mom, deciding to leave home and live on my own. A completely unfamiliar place, but it was a really pleasant place, rich in greenery and peaceful. My parents didn't stop me and even helped me a lot during the move. After the move, while taking a break, I heard this from my mom. "A few days after you locked yourself in your room, Bob came. He told me everything that happened between you two, and then he apologized." I didn't understand why my parents were apologizing. Of course, what Bob did is unforgivable. His parents came to apologize too. even kneeling down. But we heard about Sophie as well. I know you can't forgive her, Catherine, but Sophie is also a daughter to us, my parents explained. Both my dad and mom were distressed. She had done something terrible to me. Of course, they couldn't forgive such a person. But Sophie didn't listen to them, and it seems she went to Bob. Since then, Bob had been coming to our house at the same time every day, apologizing and asking for his marriage to Sophie to be approved. Because of Bob's actions, my parents had no choice but to accept. That's why they apologized to me for accepting his marriage to Sophie. Honestly, I didn't care anymore, but I could painfully understand my parents' feelings. It's all in the past now, it's okay. Besides, I'll meet someone better in the future, I replied positively, holding back the tears. My mom was crying. My father looked apologetic, but I said to him, "When I have children, I'm going to rely on you a lot." Both my dad and mom responded with smiles. Mom was very concerned, saying, "Don't hesitate to get in touch if anything comes up." As I started getting used to my new life and had some peace of mind, I began working at a small restaurant. The staff was small in number, but the place was very bright and I really liked the friendly atmosphere everyone had. The manager was a man named Steve, who was often teased by the part-timers. Watching their banter was enjoyable and created a warm atmosphere. A few months after I started working, a fateful event that would impact my future took place. I was confessed to by Steve. It happened when he was giving me a ride home after work. To be honest, I was unsure. Steve was a really good guy. Above all, very kind. He had both the looks and the personality that would be attractive to the opposite sex, but I was still hung up on that incident. I was scared that I might be abandoned again. Steve seemed to notice my hesitation and told me that I didn't have to give an immediate answer, and he went home for the day. Things were a little awkward for a while, but thanks to the usual banter with the part-timers and Steve's kindness, I didn't fret too much. I guess my heart had already made a decision. During one break, I learned something about Steve. Turns out, Steve had been betrayed by someone he was dating and had a terrible experience at the place he worked before this restaurant. Steve and I had the same experience. We both had been betrayed by someone we loved. That day, I decided to go home with Steve so I could hear more about his story. As we were walking home, Steve shared his past. He was actually in charge of a store before he came here. But due to certain incidents, the store lost trust and ended up closing. And Steve was held responsible and lost his job. After hearing his story, I decided to tell Steve why I came to this place. After I finished, Steve said, "You did great." He said that to me, who, despite the pain, stood up and faced forward again. I was overjoyed. And I realized that this was exactly what I wanted to hear. I did my best. I was betrayed by someone I loved and went through a tough time, but I managed to bounce back. Honestly, it was very hard. And I told Steve, "You did great too." Steve was smiling, and then I gave my answer to his confession from that day. I'm a bit of a handful, but I hope you'll be patient with me. After that, the teasing from the part-timers at the restaurant increased, but they were genuinely happy. "Congrats! Wishing you happiness forever." It's too early for that line. So there will be a time eventually. I'll say it again then. You better let me say it, or else. Oh, wait. Steve was a little flustered. I was laughing. Everyone was laughing. It was pure bliss. That was a typical day until a certain point. I was proposed to for the second time in my life. Of course, I accepted the proposal. I was determined to find happiness this time, and I believed that I could be truly happy with Steve. So I headed over to my parents' house for the first time in a while. They were thrilled. I told them everything about Steve, and they said, "Please make our daughter happy." "I promise I'll make Catherine happy," he replied with firmness and confidence. We chatted for a while. Then my dad hesitantly said, "Sophie and Bob are going to get married." They said an invitation might come, but I didn't need to stress over it. I wasn't bothered anyway, because I was happy too. In fact, I wanted to flaunt my happiness. When I told my parents that, they said, "If Catherine says so, Steve, we're counting on you if anything happens." A few days later, an invitation to Sophie's wedding arrived. I decided to attend, of course. I responded saying that both of us would be attending. Steve and I had only legally married because Sophie was planning her wedding. We figured it would put too much pressure on our parents and relatives if we had our weddings back to back. We had vowed to have our wedding ceremony once things had settled down. On the day of Sophie's wedding, Steve and I were heading to the venue together. We were reunited with Sophie and Bob, whom we haven't seen in a long time. Bob looked somewhat worn out. During the family introductions, I introduced Steve, saying, "This is my husband, Steve. I'm very proud of him." For some reason, Sophie was visibly surprised when I introduced Steve, which was memorable. On the other hand, I had something I desperately wanted to ask Bob. What had happened between him and Sophie on the day when neither my parents nor I were around? Initially, Bob found it hard to talk, but gradually began to share. Apparently, when Sophie called him on that day and he learned that I was suddenly ill, Bob decided to wait for me. Sophie then came in with strong liquor, saying it would be a waste not to enjoy. Bob, not a heavy drinker, had a couple of drinks and ended up getting drunk. Then, according to him, Sophie saw her chance and started to seduce him. Bob was too drunk to make sound judgments, so he gave in to her advances. Sophie was stunning. In addition, she had a great figure, so it's understandable for a regular guy to fall for her advances. Even so, Bob and I were engaged. However, Bob succumbed to the temptation, and from that point on, he started to pay attention to Sophie. Even after sharing this story, Bob kept apologizing to me, but at that moment, he seemed like such a small man to me. Honestly, I couldn't have cared less. I was just relieved to know the truth. Meanwhile, Steve and Sophie were talking about something. I was curious about it, but since Sophie's wedding was imminent, I decided to ask later. On the way home, I asked Steve, "Were you a bit upset when you were talking to Sophie?" "Well, as I told you before, she was my ex who betrayed me, and that's not all. She's the reason why I lost my job." I was utterly surprised. What a small world. Moreover, the fact that she was the cause of the closure of Steve's shop made it even more shocking. I decided to dig deeper. Apparently, a few months after Sophie started dating Steve, she had an affair with a certain designer. It seems Sophie thought it would be more beneficial for her to date someone in the modeling industry, even though she was dating Steve. Upon accidentally discovering this fact, Steve naturally got angry at Sophie. But Sophie, in turn, got angry at him, and they broke up. However, Sophie's anger didn't subside, and she created a fake photo of foreign objects in the dishes taken at Steve's restaurant and shared it on social media. At the time, Sophie was also doing some model work, so she had quite a few followers, and the photo spread rapidly. It even caught the attention of Steve's boss, who had left the business to him. Due to the decreased revenue, the restaurant ended up closing. As a result, Steve was fired, bearing the responsibility. Naturally, he held a grudge against this incident. However, since he didn't know who was responsible, he didn't know where to direct his anger. In the midst of all this, he learned the truth when a friend invited him for a drink. A friend of Steve's girlfriend happened to know Sophie and had seen her bragging on social media about causing a restaurant to close. Of course, Steve's friend didn't know that the now closed shop was Steve's. Steve, who unexpectedly found the culprit, could no longer do anything, so he decided to start over in a different place. That's when he met me. I apologized to Steve. "I'm sorry for the horrible things my sister did. Honestly, I'm the sister of the person who messed up Steve's life. I didn't know what to do. I seriously thought that Steve might hate me." But Steve said, "It's in the past, and it's not your fault, Catherine." I was honestly relieved. And once again, we decided to be happy together. Later, Sophie was finally punished. Sophie was going to do a photo shoot, and the place she visited for the shoot, it was our home, of all places. Indeed, it was rich in greenery and likely to take good pictures. Sophie seemed to be considering becoming a model, using this photo shoot as a stepping stone. The incident occurred at a restaurant she visited for dinner. That restaurant was none other than Steve's. I wasn't working at Steve's place anymore, so I heard about it later. As soon as they entered, both Steve and Sophie recognized each other. And immediately, Steve said, "I'm sorry, I can't let you enter," and refused Sophie's group from entering. Of course, the staff got angry and asked what was going on. Steve explained everything, what Sophie had done in the past and the hardships he had endured because of her. "She has a criminal record, and I have solid evidence. I don't want to go through the same thing again, so I refuse to let her enter." No one could say anything, and Sophie seemed to have turned pale. Furthermore, Steve said he would tell the president of the company Sophie was about to join about her past. The person who scouted Sophie was shocked and asked Steve to quit, but Steve's anger didn't subside. In the end, Sophie's photo shoot was canceled, and the incident spread in the industry, crushing her dream of becoming a model. Nobody wants to deal with a person who caused such a huge scandal in the past. On top of that, I heard from my mom that Bob's company's performance has been getting worse recently, and now he's a candidate for a demotion. She seemed worried about what would become of these two in the future. Despite such an incident, Steve and I were spending happy days as usual. And today is our long-awaited wedding. Steve and I, we both had some hard times in the past, but now we are very happy. There was also a new life in my belly. Congratulations! Wishing you a lifetime of happiness. The crew from the shop where we first met are laughing and repeating this familiar phrase. Thank you. And so, in front of everyone, Steve and I vowed to always cherish our family and be happy forever.
You not only forced our son to do household chores and child rearing, but now you're after our money too? Get out of this house, you leeching lazy bum only bringing in $700. I broke into a cold sweat as my mother-in-law pointed a knife at me and shouted. I was heartbroken after all. I was doing all the work and taking care of the kids in place of my jobless husband. I had reached my breaking point. I abandoned the chores, grabbed my child, and decided to head back to my parents' house. My name is Emily, 23 years old, living with my husband, our child, and my mother-in-law. My husband Richard was a senior at my high school, an ace of the soccer team and the admired student president. He was the object of everyone's admiration. When he returned to our hometown after getting a job, he approached me, and I was taken aback. After a few dates, we began a serious relationship. Even as an adult, he was my handsome, brag-worthy boyfriend. After I graduated from a vocational school, I found out I was pregnant. The order was a bit off, but I believed I could have a happy life with my child and Richard. My hopes were shattered during a conversation about life after marriage.
How about we live in my parents' house after we get married?
Why? I would like it to be just the three of us with our child.
That's going to cost a lot, isn't it? If we live in my parents' house, we don't need to worry about money.
If we both work, we can afford an apartment, right?
Well, about that, my income this month is pretty bad.
How bad?
Less than $1,000.
What? Why so low? You said you were working at an IT company.
Actually, I quit. Now I'm making money at the casino and working part-time.
Casino? Why on earth would you do that? Apparently, he quit his job after just 1 month.
If you're willing to cover all the expenses, I'm fine with living in an apartment.
His detached tone made me anxious, wondering if I was the only one excited about our new life. Seeing my concern, he held both my hands tightly.
It's just until I find another job. I'll make you happy, Emily. I'll do all the housework and child rearing until then.
Believing in his words, we got married. We started our life in his parents' house. After safely giving birth, I resolved to work hard for my son. Both Richard and my mother-in-law seemed happy, and I was looking forward to our future life together. However, even after the birth, Richard didn't do any housework or child rearing, spending his days at the casino. Off to the casino again? What about the housework and child rearing? When I pointed out his broken promise, Richard suddenly yelled back at me.
Don't you dare tell me what to do.
Confused about why I was being yelled at, mother-in-law showed up having heard the commotion. What's all this noise?
Oh, it's just that I'm busy with work and she's asking for help with housework and child rearing.
What? That's a wife's job. Richard hadn't told mother-in-law he quit his job. He portrayed me as the worst wife, pushing housework and child rearing onto him. Mother-in-law initially started hating me after buying into Richard's story. Richard continued his part-time work and casino visits.
Though he only earned about $700, he would ambitiously go to the casino, aiming to double it, but ended up losing everything. I paid most of the living expenses. Consequently, our life became tough without me working. So I started working again after leaving our son at a childcare center. Thankfully, my qualification as a dental hygienist landed me a job pretty quickly. But every day when I got home from work, I was met with my mother-in-law shouting,
What time do you think it is? This isn't playtime. You're a parent, yet all you do is frolic around. Get to making dinner now.
In her frustration, mother-in-law slammed the newspaper she was holding onto the floor. She had a habit of lashing out at things, sometimes going as far as smashing plates when she got really angry. My mother-in-law was the explosive type. Her attitude would shift at the slightest annoyance. The fear of not knowing what she might do next kept me submissive. But between caring for my young son, working, and doing housework every day, I was mentally and physically drained. I couldn't take it anymore, so I decided to talk to Richard again. I caught him early in the morning before he left for the casino. Listen, I am at my limit. You could help out with our kid a little, couldn't you? What? Like I said, I'm busy. I'm preparing to get a new job. You understand, right? Would you rather I stay unemployed forever? You'd be in trouble then, huh? The father of your child, jobless. If you don't like it, just do as you're told.
But we are barely scraping by as it is. I am covering all our food costs with my savings, you know.
Do you have any idea how much diapers cost?
You say you're earning at the casino, but you never give us any money.
Our living expenses were mostly covered by my money. Mother-in-law used to pay for utilities, but recently she started asking for $500 a month, so I was dipping into my savings. Even the food costs were coming out of my savings and my money was running out fast. All I had was money saved from a part-time job I had when I was a student. Enough. The nerve of you to talk back. You have a lot of nerve to say such things after you moved into my house. Richard was usually very kind. However, when it came to money or casino-related issues, his attitude changed drastically. Hearing Richard's shouting, mother-in-law entered the room.
What now? Is your wife complaining again?
Yeah, she is. She's telling me to do housework and childcare, and to pay for living expenses on top of that.
What a brazen woman you are. Richard, you should go to work.
Thanks, I'll be going.
With that, Richard left. As soon as Richard was out of sight, mother-in-law's gaze sharpened. You have got some nerve, pushing childcare and household work onto us and demanding money. You should be ashamed. It's not like that. I'm not making demands, it's just that, without a little help, life is really tough. You must be wasting it. Aren't you careless with money?
Mother-in-law didn't understand the situation at all. She didn't know that her own son was unemployed and spending all his time at the casino. I was told to keep quiet, but I was at my wit's end.
Do you know that Richard isn't bringing in a single cent? He's unemployed because he quit his job. What are you saying? Richard has always been excellent. He might have failed his college entrance exams, but he got a job at a reputable company. He quit that job after a month. He's always at the casino now. I can't survive on my savings alone. That's ridiculous. Stop talking nonsense.
Mother-in-law refused to believe me. Her son, who had always excelled in sports and studies, was her pride and joy. She couldn't bear the thought that he was now unemployed and wasting his days at the casino. Her face red with anger, mother-in-law stormed out of the room. When she came back with a heavy stride, to my surprise, she was holding a knife in her hand.
What are you planning to do? Please stop it.
I back away, lifting my son into my arms. Mother-in-law is slowly closing the distance between us, knife raised high. She brings the tip of the knife to my throat.
Enough of your insults to my son. Having a wife like you is ruining Richard. You're a lazy parasite living off a measly $70,000. Get out of this house.
Her harsh words make me break into a cold sweat. The slightest movement could cause the blade to harm my son. Seeing my silence and my pale face, mother-in-law seems satisfied and lowers the knife.
Good, you understand. Parasites like you are not wanted anywhere. Just stay quiet and do your housework.
She throws these words at me before returning to her room. Released from the tension, I collapsed onto the ground. Sensing something wrong, my son started to sob. As I stroked his back, I made a decision. We can't live in this house any longer. It's unbelievable that someone would threaten with a knife so casually. She doesn't even seem human. Up until now, I have been swayed by Richard's sweet words. After every shouting match, I used to think that I needed to support him, that he would fall apart without me. But I have reached my limit. Above all, my most powerful thought was that I had to protect my crying son in my arms. I can't raise my son in this house. I decided to leave. The next day, a stern-faced mother-in-law speaks to me in the morning.
Emily, please prepare for my husband's memorial service next week. All our relatives will be there, so make sure everything is perfect.
She leaves for a neighbor's house without waiting for my reply. Next week is my father-in-law's memorial service. Richard and mother-in-law had been talking about ordering a grand feast and sharing memories of father-in-law. I have been tasked with all the preparation, but I am not listening anymore. As soon as Richard and mother-in-law are out, I hastily pack my things and flee the in-laws' house. I don't have much, just my clothes, my son's toys, and diapers. When I get back to my parents' house, they're surprised. But when I tell them everything, my mother is moved to tears and holds me tight. My usually calm father is very angry and tells me to rest at home. Then, that evening, the phone rings. It must be Richard, wondering why I haven't returned to make dinner. I ignore the call and block his number. The next day, mother-in-law and Richard show up together at my parents' house. They're banging on the door early in the morning. My parents try to drive them away, but I tell them to let them in. When I open the door, they start shouting immediately.
How dare you leave without a word? What kind of wife are you?
Don't you think it's strange to leave without saying anything? Can you please not shout? You're disturbing the neighbors. I keep my voice calm, suppressing the urge to say who's the real problem here. When they see my attitude, they try to grab me, but my father steps in. We will call the police if you resort to violence. Let's talk inside first. With my parents present, I started the conversation with mother-in-law and Richard. Why did you leave without saying anything? I had reached my limit. Housework, childcare, and my job all overwhelming me, and yet you never lifted a finger to help, despite my pleas. Well, I was busy too.
Busy at the casino? Like I've already said, our son doesn't go to casinos. Stop spreading lies.
It seemed like the mother-in-law still thought Richard was working. It's unthinkable because he's such a good son. She must think like that. Ignorance is bliss. So, mother-in-law, where do you think Richard is employed?
At a securities company. I saw the job offer letter after all.
Well, we should call them and find out if Richard is still there. That would settle it. What? Wait a minute. Richard was obviously flustered. What's the problem? If you're working there, it shouldn't be an issue. Well, that's, Ignoring the visibly sweating Richard, I dialed a securities company on my phone. I switched the call to speaker mode so everyone could hear and asked if Richard was working there. That individual resigned several years ago. If memory serves me right, he was with us for just about a month.
What?
The words from the phone left mother-in-law speechless. Richard was looking down, his fist clenched.
Did you really quit? Why?
Because it was frustrating. Every day was just grunt work and the boss would yell at me for the smallest mistakes. That's harassment. Richard, why don't you tell us what you've been doing since? I'm job hunting. How many years have you been job hunting? You don't seem to be getting any offers. Tell me how many companies you have applied to so I can verify. Well, there aren't any good job offers. When a good company comes along, I'll get a job. You seem to have a lot of confidence in yourself, by the way. You're working part-time now, right? How much did you make last month? 700.
700? Didn't you tell me that Emily could only earn 700 and couldn't support herself? So you were the one supporting her?
Apparently, he told mother-in-law that I wasn't earning anything, but the reality was quite the opposite. As a dental hygienist, my salary isn't huge, but I earn at least $2,000. Knowing the truth, mother-in-law was blushing furiously as she glared at Richard. In that situation, Richard became extremely angry. Why do you have to do this? This is all your fault, making me look like a fool. Seems like his pride was hurt and he couldn't stand being embarrassed, so he hit the table hard. You shouldn't reveal things like this in public. It's defamation. I sighed in disbelief. If you want to sue, go ahead. But I'll sue you for threatening me with a knife too. Besides, Lawsuits aren't free. Do you have the money? At that, Richard clicked his tongue. He probably spent all his earnings for this month at the casino. As mother-in-law was in shock, after learning the truth about Richard's unemployment, I laid it out for her. I am the one earning all our living expenses. When we got married, Richard said he would take care of housework and childcare in place of my job. But after we married, he did none of it. That's different from what I heard. Mother-in-law just went ahead and trusted whatever Richard told her, right? She got upset when I asked for help with the chores and childcare. She even pointed a knife at me and told me to keep quiet and do my housework. I could see my mother-in-law's face turning pale. Standing in front of my parents being called out for her misconduct, she looked uncomfortable. Mother-in-law, you haven't contributed a penny to the household either. We have been living on my income this whole time. I have no intention of working for you any longer. So I would like a divorce, please. Divorce? Hold on a second. Don't just drop that bombshell all of a sudden.
Yes, that's right. I'll help out too. So please, come back.
No, thank you. When I made my stance clear, their eyes widened in surprise. They were likely startled because I, who had always acquiesced after being yelled at or persistently begged, had clearly refused this time. I don't want to live with a person who threatens me with a knife just to get their way. I'm tired of living with Richard, who does nothing but gamble at the casino all day. I am going to make sure you pay me compensation for all the hard work I have put in so far, as well as child support. No way! That's going to be a problem. I can't possibly afford to pay that much. Well, then quit gambling right now and start paying. But there is no way I can do that. I don't have a job. I was appalled by Richard's stupidity. You don't have a job because you're too picky about what work you do. Don't you have any desire to do whatever it takes? There aren't many companies out there that would hire someone without any significant qualifications or work experience. Don't take society for granted. Many people are out there working their hardest in difficult situations to earn a living. Yet people who quit their jobs at the drop of a hat because they got angry or didn't enjoy their work, no one's going to want to hire them. He keeps saying he'll find a job someday, but there's no way he will manage it at this rate. I'll contact you through my lawyer about the divorce proceedings. Please do not contact me at all from now on.
What kind of selfish... What's going to happen to us?
At my curt words, mother-in-law flared up in anger. I made a deliberately puzzled face and responded to mother-in-law's words. I don't know. Earn a living on your own?
You heartless woman.
Heartless? I don't want to be called that by you, remember? When you said the parasite living off a measly $700 per month is a nuisance? Leave my house? Do you remember saying that to me, your daughter-in-law? While holding a knife to my throat. By the way, the lazy person making $700 a month is right next to you. Are you not telling him to leave? As I spoke, mother-in-law started shaking with rage. Maybe I went too far. Mother-in-law leaned over and grabbed my collar. Stop it. I told you. I will call the police if you lay a hand on her. My father forcefully pulled her off of me, but she was too riled up. So not only threats with a knife, but physical violence too? How barbaric. Don't you think it's better not to compound your crimes any further? Mother-in-law glared at me resentfully. Ignoring my mother-in-law, I turned my gaze to Richard. I believed he would change, but I'm giving up on that now. I need to protect our son. I won't trouble you anymore. I'll take care of the money, the housework, and the childcare, so please come back. You will take care of the money? Really? Even with careful budgeting, it's over $1,000 a month. Can you earn that? Upon hearing my words, Richard's face turned pale. He had never made more than $1,000 since he quit his job. But I have mom's pension.
What? So you're telling me you're dependent on my pension now?
Even my mother-in-law couldn't keep her calm at his absurd words. There's nothing else I can do. I don't have a job now. I'm doing part-time work. Can't we try to work things out? My father, hearing Richard's unyielding stance, finally spoke up. Richard, you and your mother have taken great advantage of our precious daughter. If I had known you were such a person, I would have opposed the marriage by all means. I will never let her step foot in your house again. I'll sever all ties. But I can't live without Emily. Please, give me another chance. Don't joke with me. Can't live without our daughter? You're already planning to depend on her, a man who has no intention or grit to earn his own living and make his wife's life comfortable. doesn't deserve our daughter. Leave now."
For the first time I saw my father shout. It sent chills down my spine. Richard and mother-in-law's too. Richard was kneeling, his head bowed. It was a comical sight. The charming image I had of him during our college days was completely gone.
"Please reconsider. I beg you, Emily."
But my parents wouldn't budge. They were fed up. "I don't want to be treated like a slave by you two anymore. Please don't involve me in anything from now on." As soon as we kicked them out of the house, we locked the door. For a while, they banged on the door and shouted, but as soon as a police officer passing by addressed them, they ran off. After that, I heard Richard was cut off by his mother and kicked out of the house. Now, he's living in a rundown apartment, surviving on welfare and part-time work. Apparently, because of his short temper, he doesn't stick to one job for long and keeps switching between part-time jobs at convenience stores, construction sites, and so on. He's barely making ends meet in order to pay me compensation and child support. He's juggling multiple part-time jobs and is unable to look for a full-time job. There were rumors that he's still going to the casino and even in debt, but I'm not interested. The word about Richard's downfall spread quickly among our high school classmates, and I received numerous sightings and informations about him. It seems that the neighbors have witnessed mother-in-law kicking Richard out, and their frequent arguments. His unemployment and the fact that he was left by his wife became public knowledge. She must be feeling extremely embarrassed after boasting about her son all the time. She hardly ever leaves the house now. With the help of my parents in doing the housework and raising my son, I continue working. I now have more free time to spend with my son. I don't need to leave him at the childcare center since my parents take care of him, so everything has been great. I wish I had divorced sooner. From now on, I'm going to cherish the time I spend with my son and watch him grow up closely. My name is Sally. I'm 32 years old and in my 8th month of pregnancy. I used to work as an office employee, but now I'm on maternity leave. After giving birth, I plan to take parental leave and take care of the baby myself for a while. My husband Eric is 35, 3 years older than me and works for a major company. We got married 2 years ago and I became pregnant smoothly. Now every day is filled with anticipation and anxiety as I await my first childbirth. Sally, your baby is due soon, isn't it? When I visit my in-laws, my sister-in-law Elnora calls out to me. I don't interact much with my brother-in-law, but Elnora is a housewife living with my in-laws, so we talk often. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law hurt her leg, and Elnora, being the wife of the eldest son, moved in to care for her, worried about leaving her alone during the day. However, mother-in-law can walk just fine, needing only a cane. Elnora has a caring personality and used to work in caregiving, so she readily agreed to move in and care for her mother-in-law. With 1 month left until my due date, I returned to my parents' home and prepare for childbirth. Even with my heavy belly, shopping for the baby and thinking about our future life was enjoyable. Then, 2 days after my due date, labor begins. I contact my husband, but for some reason, he doesn't answer or reply. At first, I was worried, but as the contractions got stronger, I had no time to think about him. My husband was supposed to be there for the birth, but in the end, he never came and my daughter was born. After safely giving birth, I called my husband to inform him and then fall asleep from relief and exhaustion. I wake up to someone calling my name.
Sally, how long are you going to sleep?"
I open my eyes to see my husband and in-laws. My husband happily says,
"Dad and Mom came too. Where's the baby?"
I had told him I didn't want to see anyone after giving birth, so why did he bring his parents? I finally sit up and tell him the baby should be in the nursery. It's a healthy girl. Then mother-in-law suddenly exclaims, "A girl? She can't be the heir." My father-in-law adds,
"Not a boy? Utterly useless."
I'm confused and my husband even says,
"What? It's a girl after all? I thought it might be a boy since they said it wasn't certain."
My husband is a second son, so I thought being an heir didn't matter, but the eldest son and his wife are undergoing fertility treatment, so they were expecting a boy from me.
I felt anger at their words, but I was too tired and in pain to even get angry. A nurse noticed and kicked out my husband and in-laws. I cried and the nurse comforted me. After that, my husband didn't even visit, and my daughter and I faced discharge day. My parents came to pick us up and we went home. My husband was kind when we got married, but he changed one day, and as the baby grew, I felt his feelings drifting further away. Just when I found out I was pregnant, my husband made a mistake at work and was demoted, resulting in a pay cut. It didn't seem like a big mistake, so I thought he could recover quickly. But he became upset that a colleague became his boss, lost motivation, and still hasn't been promoted. I hoped that having the baby might change him, but now I wonder what will happen. As I'm grappling with these feelings, my husband calls. I answer, hope in my heart. Sally, when are you coming back? I'm planning to come back in about a month, but I have luggage, so I want you to pick me up on a day that's convenient for you, Eric. Then my husband snorts and says something unbelievable. You know, I bought a condominium near the station. What? The high-rise condominium near the station? Yeah. Wait, the high-rise condominium is really expensive, isn't it? Yeah, and the view is amazing. Unbelievably, my husband tells me that while I was at my parents' house, he bought a luxury high-rise condominium, moved out of our old one, and has already moved in. What do you mean? We don't have that kind of money, do we? Unfazed by my panic, my husband says, I used the money from selling the family home as a down payment. What? He sold a family home? What about his parents, his brother, and his wife? Ignoring my confusion, my husband laughed and said, From now on, we'll live with mom and dad. What? Dad? Mom? I can't keep up with his sudden words. Who are mom and dad? His parents? They're already grandparents and he's calling them mom and dad? As I'm speechless, my husband continues. After all, you're not working. You were just lying around at home, so I don't need you. That was only when I was bedridden with severe morning sickness or abdominal pain, not always. Rather, since I went on maternity leave, I've been doing all the housework we used to share. He didn't have to say it like that. As I'm thinking this, my husband says something even worse. Get out, you housewife parasite. The child wasn't a boy, and my brother's undergoing fertility treatment, so I'm being counted on. So I'll remarry a woman who can bear an heir. Mom and dad said they don't need a childless couple, and my sisters wanted to live separately. That's when this high-rise condominium was on sale. Your stuff is in a rental storage, so go get it sometime. Well, anyway, we're getting a divorce. With that, he hung up unilaterally. I'm stunned. I have lost my place to go home? Whether it's sadness or regret, tears naturally spill. I try to think about what to do next, but I can't find an answer. At that moment, my daughter wakes up crying. Wiping my tears and holding my daughter, I realize that I'm the only one who can protect her, and I must be strong. Seeing my daughter stop crying and smile, my heart is soothed. I stand up and begin to organize what I need to do. I tell my parents the situation, and of course they're furious, but I tell them I want a divorce and ask for their help. Half a month later, with no contact from my husband, I sent my father to tell him my intention to divorce. Then my husband called me right away. Hey, what's this about dividing property? The money in the bank account is mine. I won't give you even $1. I had been silent before, but after half a month, I had recovered both mentally and physically. And I wasn't going to be like before. True, the account was in Eric's name, but that was shared property for both of us. In fact, I also put money into that account for living expenses, so it's all subject to property division. What? But it's in my name, right? That's why it's shared property. I didn't think he was that dense, or maybe he's just being self-serving. Either way, whether my husband understands or not, I will make sure the property is divided. Even if you don't agree, we will divide the property properly. Besides, you're the one who said you wanted a divorce, right? I want to divorce someone like you, so just sign the divorce papers, okay? How dare you talk to your husband like that after I've supported you all this time? Fine, I'll divorce you. I'll write it right now. Just wait. I deliberately angered my husband to get him to write the divorce papers, and this strategy seemed to be a great success. After hanging up, I withdrew money from the account where I managed the household finances. I couldn't withdraw it all at once due to the limit, so I took it out over several days. But my husband didn't seem to notice and he didn't say anything. I submitted the filled-out divorce papers that my father brought back the next day and they were accepted. And we officially became strangers. I'm struggling with my first child-rearing experience while staying at my parents' house. I'm gradually getting used to parenting and above all, my daughter is adorable and I feel happy. A few months later, while soothing my daughter, someone came to visit. It was my ex-husband, Eric. I hadn't seen his face since my daughter was born, but I didn't feel anything. I wasn't angry or sad, I responded expressionlessly. What? This is a nuisance. Then Eric suddenly bowed his head. Sally, please come back. I could only sigh at the expected turn of events. I tried to close the door silently, but Eric sat down in front of it and started talking unilaterally. Actually, I'm about to be kicked out of that high-rise condominium. I figured. Probably because you don't have enough money, right? The savings should have been more, but they're gone. Dad quit his job and Mom is bragging to her friends about living in a high-rise condominium and always throwing parties. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at that point. There's no way Eric's income alone would get a loan, so probably father-in-law's income was considered too. If he quits, of course, they won't be able to pay. Dad and Mom, huh? I can only laugh. Suppressing my laughter, Eric continues unaware. So, before I knew it, the account balance was gone, and if I don't pay by next week, they said I have to leave, so please come back. After laughing for a while, I glared at Eric. What's going to change if I go back? Just another housewife parasite, right? Well, right now the house is a mess, and no one's cooking. What? Come to think of it, mother-in-law was never good at housework. Since my brother-in-law got married, Elnora had been taking care of a lot of things, and it seemed like she had been doing everything since they moved in together. Come to think of it, I wonder what happened to Elnora. Hey, what happened to your brother and Elnora? You said you sold the family home, right? Yeah, my brother was always against living in a place that was beyond our means, and Dad got angry, and since he wanted to live separately anyway, he kicked them out. My brother-in-law was sensible. I'm glad Elnora doesn't seem to be involved. I've been busy taking care of my daughter and didn't have time to worry about it. Look, shouldn't you guys figure it out on your own? Asking me to come back is just because you want a housekeeper, right? Who do you think would go back to that? I'm busy taking care of my daughter. I don't have time to take care of you guys. My daughter brings me happiness, but what do you guys give me? Who would want to be a housekeeper without even getting paid? Then Eric said in a panic, what do you mean? It's love. Love. I have love for you, don't I? At those words, I laughed. Love? From Eric? I don't need that. I don't even need money. Even though I only stated the obvious, Eric looked hurt for some reason. I took the opportunity to say what I hadn't been able to say before. First of all, it was tough on your income alone. That's why I put the same amount into the house. And I wasn't a housewife. I was on maternity leave. I was receiving an allowance and putting it into the house, and I did all the housework because I was the one at home. You wanted to act like the head of the family, but I'm the one who should be thanked. It's natural that life would become harder without the money I was putting in. And this is what happens when you make a stupid purchase like a high-rise condominium. Then Eric looked genuinely surprised as if he didn't understand. I had explained it when I went on maternity leave, but I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't say anything. By the way, why did father-in-law quit his job? Oh, Dad said it would look bad to work while living in a high-rise condominium, so he quit. Are they both stupid, father and son? I don't understand their logic at all. And what's with this papa and mama thing? Have you been holding back and calling them father and mother in front of me? Have you always been calling them that at your age? That's creepy. I felt relieved to finally say what I had wanted to say for a long time. When I urged Eric, who was hanging his head, to go home, he begged me to let him see our daughter at least. But that was just an excuse to keep me, not because he really wanted to see her. What? You don't need her because she's not a boy, right? Your family is just Papa and Mama, right? You don't even know our daughter's name now. I haven't told you and you haven't asked. If you really wanted to see her, you would have been more involved with her sooner. After I said that and closed the front door, Eric slowly walked away. A few days later, I received a call from Elnora for the first time in a while. I'm sorry, I couldn't get in touch. A lot has been going on. Elnora said she didn't know the address of my parents' house and couldn't send a birth celebration gift, so she arranged to come over to our place. My brother-in-law came along and bowed his head to me and my parents, apologizing for his family's behavior, but he was not at fault at all. According to what I heard, they were kicked out of the high-rise condominium and only the loan remained. They tried to get close to my brother-in-law and his wife, but they were refused any further involvement, and in the end, they're living in an old apartment building that's about 50 years old. Father-in-law has found a new job, but the salary is much lower than before, and mother-in-law has never worked, so she doesn't even have a part-time job. Apparently, they often argue loudly, and the voices of their quarrels calling each other Papa and Mama have become the talk of the neighborhood. My daughter is growing rapidly, and she will soon celebrate her first birthday. Her safe growth is my greatest happiness. I'm looking forward to her continued growth in the future.
My name is Cassie. I'm 35 years old. I married Wilfred 5 years ago. We initially wanted to have kids and even went through preconception care, but it just didn't happen. It was emotionally and physically draining, so we decided to give up on having children. I still love kids, and sometimes when I see a baby, I think, I wish we could have had one. But life with just Wilfred is peaceful, and I've come to appreciate that. Then one day, my brother-in-law and his wife showed up unexpectedly. Wilfred was at work, but I work from home, so I answered the door. To my surprise, my brother-in-law Curtis and his wife Isadora had large carry-on bags with them. Going on a trip? My guess was right. Isadora said, "Long time no see, Cassie. We're actually going to Bali." I really don't like Isadora. She and Curtis got married before Wilfred and I did. She once said to us, "You two are a perfect match, both missing the marriage boat." And I found it incredibly rude. Isadora loves to brag about Curtis working at a top-tier company. She never misses an opportunity to say, "My Curtis works at a prestigious company." And it's always annoying. What I hate the most is her making fun of our infertility. She knew we were doing preconception care, but said, "Doesn't preconception care feel unnatural? Will a child born that way even grow up properly? A naturally born child is always best, like our daughter Sasha." So it wasn't surprising that she came to brag about her trip to Bali. I was about to say, "Have a good trip," and close the door when Isadora said, "Wait," and pushed her 3-year-old daughter Sasha towards me. "We came to leave Sasha with you. She's too young to appreciate Bali. We'll be gone for a week, so take good care of her." "Excuse me?" Still stunned, Isadora went on. "Sasha has dry skin, so please apply cream after her bath. Oh, and she usually goes to bed at 8, so make sure she's asleep by then. She's potty training, so take her to the toilet as much as possible. And absolutely no eggs. She's allergic." "Wait, what?" "No, I can't do this. You can't just drop this on me." I tried to refuse her overwhelming demands, but Isadora ignored me. She tilted her head and smirked. "Cassie, you were doing preconception care, right? You wanted kids. I thought you'd be happy to look after a child you couldn't have, even if it's just for a week." Her words were so shocking, I couldn't say anything. Isadora dropped one more bombshell before leaving. "Take good care of Sasha. Oh, and don't leave her with my mother-in-law. I can't stand her." "Sasha, listen to your aunt, okay?" Curtis patted Sasha's head, and they left for their trip. Sasha and I stood dumbfounded at the doorway. When she realized she'd been left behind, she started to cry. I hurriedly took her inside. I'd wanted kids but had almost no experience with them. I didn't know what to do with a crying Sasha, so I tried to soothe her by saying, "It's okay. and showing her some cartoons on TV. Finally, she calmed down. Sasha had a small backpack with 3 diapers and a change of clothes for 1 day. Even with no parenting experience, I knew this wasn't enough for a week. Isadora often says, "This is why poor people," about us. But if she thinks we're poor, why didn't she leave any money for Sasha's care? My frustration grew. Isadora hates my mother-in-law, but I don't. I immediately called her for help. "I'm sorry to ask this so suddenly," I explained over the phone. "Oh my, what a situation!" she exclaimed and rushed over. My mother-in-law is straightforward, and often misunderstood as harsh, but I like her cheerful and no-nonsense personality. "Grandma!" "Sasha, long time no see. How have you been?" Sasha was thrilled to see her. Isadora never visited her in-laws, but when she was away for work, Curtis would often leave Sasha with my mother-in-law. Of course, we kept it a secret from Isadora. "My Sasha has become quite the talker. Curtis can't keep secrets, so he stopped leaving her with me. It's nice to see Sasha after so long," said my mother-in-law, genuinely happy. Sasha seemed happy too. So when my mother-in-law asked if she could take her, I said, "Please do." That night, Wilfred came home. When I told him what happened, he was furious. "Isadora knew we wanted kids, and still said that? You handled it well, Cassie. I would have lost my temper," he said, making me feel a bit better. A week later, a tanned Curtis and Isadora came to pick up Sasha. Wilfred had taken the day off, so we both confronted them. When we told them we'd left Sasha with my mother-in-law, Isadora's face twisted in anger. "I told you not to leave her with my mother-in-law. I hate her. Sasha likes her for some reason, and it bothers me." "Isadora, could you not openly say you hate someone's mother? It's rude," Wilfred calmly replied. Isadora glared at me. "I left Sasha with you out of goodwill. You both wanted kids, so I thought you should experience what it's like. It's not all fun and games, and you trampled on my goodwill by not even listening to my simple request. That's low." Her audacity left me cold. I snapped. People probably got mad at this. I confronted Isadora with the words that came to my mind, which had become strangely calm. "The ones who are low are you and Curtis." "What?" "Why didn't you take Sasha on your trip? You say she's too young to appreciate ballet, but you just didn't want the hassle. And leaving her for a week with only 3 diapers and 1 change of clothes, what's that about?" "Well, would you normally leave your egg-allergic child with someone else, even a relative? Allergies can be life-threatening, and Sasha cried when you left. Did you even consider how she'd feel being abandoned for a week?" Isadora and Curtis were speechless. Finally, Isadora forced out some words. "But I left Sasha with you out of goodwill, Cassie. You work from home. You have time. We're family. You could help a little with childcare. Or is it because you're poor and you didn't get paid for babysitting?" As I sighed at Isadora's relentless need to belittle me, Wilfred, standing next to me, spoke up. "Listen, Isadora, you keep calling us poor, but I think we earn more than you do. I work for a top international company, and Cassie makes twice as much as Curtis." As he said this, he pointed to a character merchandise displayed in our entryway. "Recognize this character? Cassie designed it." "What?" Isadora and Curtis looked stunned, and for good reason. I'd never told them, not wanting to brag. But I was the designer of a character everyone knows. Designing its illustrations and merchandise is my main job, but I also illustrate children's books and create corporate mascots. I'm far from idle at home. I had no idea Cassie was such an amazing illustrator. "Hey Cassie, give me an autograph. I want to show off at work." I couldn't hide my disdain as Curtis stepped forward, ignoring his stunned wife, and asked for an autograph. No. I refused, but he kept begging. Come on, please. Just then, my mother-in-law walked up from behind Isadora and Curtis. Ah, Mom. Wilfred noticed her, and Isadora quickly turned around. Isabella told her mother-in-law to bite. Mother-in-law, thank you for taking care of Sasha. We'll take her back now. No, I'll keep Sasha for a while longer. What? What are you talking about, Mom? Isadora and Curtis half smiled, thinking my mother-in-law was joking, but she was serious. Have you been feeding Sasha properly? My mother-in-law had been concerned that Sasha was smaller than other kids her age. After cooking for her every day, being mindful of her egg allergy, Sasha had said, Mom and Dad never cook. It seems that Isadora and Curtis found it too much of a hassle to prepare meals for their 2-year-old daughter Sasha, who has an egg allergy, so they've been giving her store-bought baby food. You can't blame anyone for calling this neglect. I've reported you to Child Protective Services. I've also offered to take care of Sasha for a while, so you two should go home, said the mother-in-law, who had worked as a public health nurse for many years and was very knowledgeable about child development. Although she had always been suspicious, she had turned a blind eye, thinking it was wrong to doubt her own son and his wife. But after spending a week together, she decided that she couldn't ignore the situation any longer. After a heated argument at the front door, Isadora and Curtis retreated, unable to withstand the mother-in-law's forcefulness. I'm sorry for causing such a scene. Don't worry, I'll take care of Sasha, she said before leaving. Within a month of this big commotion, Curtis showed up unannounced at our house. Apparently, his affair had been discovered. He had lied about going on a business trip abroad and was caught meeting his mistress. Isadora kicked him out. Initially, he went to his parents' house, but since Sasha was there, his father-in-law kicked him out. And he had no choice but to come to our place. Of course, we have no obligation to hide Curtis at our house, so Wilfred and I flatly refused. We have no obligation to harbor you. Why don't you find a hotel? We told him. And he left, shoulders slumped. In the end, Isadora and Curtis divorced. Curtis gained sole custody and moved back in with his parents after apologizing. I've heard from my mother-in-law that he's working hard to be a good dad to Sasha now, I learned. Isadora, who had not been properly raising Sasha, lost custody and broke down crying during the negotiations. She quit her job and returned to her parents' home in the countryside. It was pitiful to see Isadora, who had always acted so superior, end up broken and retreating to the countryside. Auntie, did you come to play again today? Yeah, what should we play today? Let's play house. You be the baby, and Sasha would be the mom. Sure. I started visiting my in-laws to play with Sasha during my work breaks. Both my in-laws and Curtis, who works during the day, are grateful for it. I really appreciate you being so good to Sasha, Curtis told me recently. But even without their gratitude, I'm just happy to be friends with Sasha. When she lived with Isadora and Curtis, she often had a doll-like expression. But now she shows a lively, childlike smile. And above all, I love my picture books. And she absolutely loved the picture books I bring from work, which boosts my motivation even more.
My name is Corinne. Believe it or not, at 34, I have recently become obsessed with a boy band. I want to share a bizarre story that happened to me 7 years ago. Back then, I was dating Ronald, who is the same age as me. We had been together for 2 years already. We both worked at the same bank, not to sound snobbish, but we were both pretty successful. As a couple, we were thriving both financially and career-wise at a young and vibrant age of 27. Naturally, we were both seriously considering marriage, or at least I was. However, no matter how long I waited, Ronald never proposed. Not only that, our dates started becoming less frequent. Eventually, he even stood me up. Worse yet, it was the day we were supposed to go see a movie I had been wanting to watch. It wasn't just about missing the movie. I felt like my feelings were being disregarded. I knew for a fact that Ronald wasn't busier than usual at work. If anything, his career seemed to be on a decline, especially compared to his colleagues. To put it simply, it had been overtaken by other coworkers. To make matters more complicated, I was getting signals at work that a promotion was coming my way. I couldn't help but think, am I going to hurt Ronald's pride with my promotion? Despite being angry about being stood up, I kept making excuses for him. After all, sometimes it's healthy to have some space in a relationship, right? Or so I thought. Fast forward 3 weeks. It was our first date since that infamous no-show. Ronald was late again. When I called him, he simply said, "Sorry, I forgot. I'll be there soon." Huh? Again? Annoyed, but not wanting to fight, I waited at the restaurant we agreed upon. When Ronald finally showed up, he seemed distracted, as if his mind was elsewhere. I couldn't enjoy our time together. Every time we seemed to connect, he'd pick up his phone and start scrolling. How many times did you text this person today? The entire time, our eyes hardly met. He didn't even notice that I'd put extra effort into my hair and wore a dress I never wear to work. It's like he wouldn't have noticed if I was replaced by a teddy bear. That's what the atmosphere was like. Recently, I noticed that Ronald had been checking his phone frequently at work. I never contact him while I'm at work. Before diving into work, Ronald rarely checked his mobile phone. He always said it's because it would break his concentration. This is what he himself said. So when I saw him on his phone during our date, I wondered, is he giving up on his career? I felt anxious as if it was happening to me. Is he just not into this job anymore? On a date, of all times, what's with this attitude, darling? Isn't this too careless, especially towards your girlfriend? I felt increasingly annoyed by his indifference, and I decided to speak up. So, Ron, I've found someone I like. Excuse me? Like it's straight from a book. He told me he likes someone else. I then say, "Oh, that's nice. Who is she?" "I think it would be miserable for us to stay together if neither of us intends to marry. It's better if we're with someone we actually like." It seemed he didn't realize how absurd it was to say he'd found someone else. What he says boils down to, I've been keeping a marriageable woman at my side with no intention to marry. "I'm sure you understand." "No, I don't understand. At all." I replied without missing a beat. My tone was harsh. Anger took over me. Ronald seemed slightly taken aback. "What do you mean you found someone else? A coworker?" I started peppering him with questions like a child. He stammered. "I have a right to know. Are you just interested in her, or is this someone you already are involved with?" I didn't want to say it. Was he two-timing me? I felt torn between wanting to forget him and the fact that I still had feelings for him. I hated myself for not being able to despise him completely. "No, I haven't cheated on you." I felt somewhat relieved. He wasn't lying. So is he infatuated with someone? Naturally, I asked Ronald about that as well. Then Ronald dropped a bombshell. "I've realized I won't be able to advance further in my career, so I'm considering an arranged marriage with someone from a good family background." What? I was speechless. I never expected him to say something like that. Any remaining feelings I had for Ronald vanished. "You know, my older brother left home because he couldn't get along with our parents. They have high hopes for me and I want to meet their expectations, but I can't do it alone anymore. Marriage might be the answer. Maybe climbing another ladder somewhere else, he tried to explain. Ronald always acts like such a goody two-shoes, who's all about family values, and I was getting tired of it. Who does this guy think he is? Even though we're the same age, all I see now is a man who's not even a lover anymore. Just a guy trying to marry into money because he knows he's lacking. My parents set me up in an arranged marriage with the daughter of a major furniture company CEO, and I knew she was the one. That's gotta be the shallowest "she's the one" I've ever heard. He's only after her family's wealth, isn't he? What happened to love? So you're not in love with a person, but a wallet? My gaze toward Ronald grows icier by the second. Ronald seems to notice, looking increasingly uncomfortable. So he does feel a bit guilty, but the conversation reaches an unbelievable climax. Given that we're getting married, I'd like us to break up. What? How many times am I going to have to say what today? If he wasn't two-timing me, we shouldn't have been dating. He only met her through an arranged marriage setup. So they've decided to get married? This might have happened among old nobility who married without ever having dated, but we're in the 21st century now. What's going on? Did your family time travel or something? So you're not even dating her, but you're getting married? Well, her parents said yes, so they told me to break up with you, Corin. Parents? Again? How old are you? How obedient can you be? I'm getting frustrated. But then it strikes me. I've heard a similar story recently. As Ronald begins to falter, I crack a smile. I'll break up with you, but you have to introduce me to her right now. You at least know her contact info, right? He looks panicked, not knowing what I'm thinking. If you don't, I won't break up with you. I press on. I would happily break up with him, but I had my suspicions. If I'm right, and I'm pretty sure I am, I concealed a grin as I imagined what would happen next. And indeed, despite Ronald's objections, I succeeded in getting him to call over his arranged marriage partner. Ronald suddenly stands up, looking past me. I realized his arranged partner must have arrived and quickly turned around. I burst into laughter, clutching my stomach. I know it's not ladylike, but I couldn't help it. His arranged partner also recognizes me and exclaims, Corin? Oh, I knew it. I was thinking this sounded familiar. There aren't many heiresses in this neighborhood having arranged marriages, you know. Laughing heartily, I approach my arranged marriage partner, take her hand, and guide her towards our table. Ronald, looking utterly confused, keeps repeating, What? What? Frederica, if you didn't say no yet? In response to my comment, Frederica, my arranged marriage partner, or should I say, just Frederica, stomps her feet and says, I've been saying I really don't want this. You should just tell the truth, I suggest. What if they object? Frederica replies. Watching our exchange, Ronald interrupts. Hold on. What's going on? Why are Miss Frederica and you, Corin, chatting like you know each other? Are you acquaintances? Sisters. What? Ronald's eyes widen, unable to keep up with my straightforward answer. Look, Frederica is my fraternal twin sister. You're proposing to my sister. What? But you have different last names. Stop lying. Ronald starts to get heated, and I playfully calm him down, saying, Whoa. No point in lying about this. Just chill. I am chill, but you have different last names and you don't even look alike. Or do you? Apparently, he's starting to see the resemblance. He keeps comparing our faces. I don't blame him. Most people have the same reaction when they see us sisters. Not all twins look like copies of each other, you know. There are many twins who don't look alike. There was a time when I mentioned our parents got divorced when I was in high school. I never talked about having a sister. Mom took me and Dad took Frederica. That's why we have different last names. No way, such a story. I didn't want this story either. A love triangle involving my sister and her arranged marriage. But it perfectly matches what I heard from Frederica the other day. I can't help but suppress a laugh. This time, I just let it out. Corin, listen, don't get me wrong. It's not like I want to be with him or anything. Feeling sorry for her, I reply, It's okay, I understand. I heard everything. Just tell him the truth. Frederica takes a sigh of relief and faces Ronald. Mr. Ronald, I apologize. I'm already in a committed relationship. What? Ronald's mouth stays open as if it's broken. He just repeats, what? Losing all vocabulary. I hadn't settled on a marriage yet, so I didn't tell Dad. Then this arranged marriage happened. I'm really sorry, Ronald. I can't be with you. Despite being an heiress, Frederica, who isn't the brightest bulb, rejects Ronald with very straightforward language. I burst into laughter, holding my stomach while Ronald stands there in disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. Confused Ronald and a relieved yet hesitant Frederica make quite the picture. Miss Frederica, could you consider? Sorry, I can't do it. I came to tell you that today. Frederica apologizes, yet the word can't comes out with undeniable force. Ronald freezes, eyes wide, as if he's lost his soul. His expression is so funny, it's painful to look at. Stomach and throat hurt from trying not to laugh. Can you at least tell me why you can't? Ronald persists, wanting a reason despite the blunt can't. It's clear that his motivation has nothing to do with affection for Frederica. I feel contempt more than disbelief at his obvious desire for Frederica's wealth. Probably because everything about you is a no-go. Frederica's boyfriend is a successful entrepreneur, a CEO of an IT company. She's not going to choose a man like you who's looking to marry up. Everyone thinks her current boyfriend is the better choice. I throw Frederica a lifeline, to which she shyly replies, I really like him. His face, his personality, everything. That's why it won't work. In other words, she's indirectly telling Ronald she doesn't like anything about him. As for Ronald, well, his face isn't bad, but his personality is another story. I totally get why Frederica wants to end things this way. Besides, my boyfriend isn't looking for an arranged marriage. I just found out you were dating Corinne. Marrying someone who would betray her is just unthinkable. The sharpest no Frederica has ever delivered. I almost applaud. Corinne, can I go? I have plans with him. Frederica says. Yeah, sure. Take care. I reply. Ronald tries to stop her, but Frederica firmly apologizes and leaves. All right, I'm leaving too. Take care, I say to Ronald, but he doesn't react. Maybe he's too shocked to be interesting anymore? Listen, one last thing. My mom originally had an arranged marriage with my dad. Know what that means? Finally, Ronald meets my eyes, looking confused. It means my mom's family was prestigious enough to arrange a marriage with a CEO like my dad. My mom is now the CEO of a company allied with Dad's. Yes, our parents married to strengthen their company's alliances. Mom was the second daughter. She wasn't supposed to be a CEO, but the eldest son's health issues and the company's poor performance changed that. And this happened 6 months ago. Ronald didn't know because I felt it was irrelevant to us. What? Then you are... Facing a pale Ronald, I flash a peace sign and smile. Yep, I'm the heiress you were after. Bye now. Just as I'm about to leave. Wait, I was wrong. I realized you're the one for me after all. Ronald blocks my way, clutching the hem of my dress. The apology feels cheap. Listen, I'm not some cheap woman who'll marry anyone with money. I don't want a man who's less competent than me and aiming to marry up. No, thank you. I angrily yelled, Don't you ever touch me again, and shrugged off the hem of my skirt he had grabbed. I heard Ronald sobbing from behind me saying, It wasn't supposed to be like this. But I didn't turn back. Later, I spread the story at work in a lighthearted manner. One colleague praised me. Go, Corinne! While another encouraged me. You did the right thing breaking up. I can introduce you to someone nice. As my reputation soared, Ronald's image and standing plummeted beyond repair. He lost the trust of our boss, and his career prospects took a nosedive. The gossip even reached other branches where Ronald's classmates worked, making matters worse. Since Ronald brought this upon himself, no one took his side, no matter how much he was bad-mouthed. Before I knew it, the rumor evolved. He proposed to triplets and tried to marry them all. What a loser! In reality, they were twins, and the proposal was a bit of a stretch. But the guy was a jerk regardless, so I didn't bother to correct the rumor. Eventually, Ronald felt so ostracized he resigned. In a tough job market, he struggled to find a new job. And when he did, the workplace went bankrupt. I heard he's still unemployed. What a waste of his so-called elite status. Meanwhile, Frederica introduced her boyfriend to Dad and got married amid comments like, "Why didn't you introduce this amazing guy sooner?" I also got promoted and was climbing the corporate ladder that Ronald had abandoned. When I was past 30, I married an accountant a coworker introduced me to, and quit my job to focus on raising our 2 daughters. I could afford to be a stay-at-home mom thanks to my husband's hard work. Back when I was in my 20s, I had dreamt of marrying an elite banker and I've been restless in my indecisive relationship. Now I'm grateful I didn't end up with a man who's like a fruit fly, attracted only to what others have. Marrying in haste can turn out to be a mistake. Now I plan to share my experiences with my daughters, teaching them to steer clear of men who are only after marital gains.
My name is Sarah. I'm 25 years old and work for a local company. I just got married this year and live with my husband Bobby, who's the same age as me. We were colleagues at the same company, an office romance that blossomed into marriage. Bobby has always shared a lot about his family, and he is very family-oriented. When I heard this, I felt he was a very kind person. Perhaps because he values the home so much, Bobby is very proficient in all household chores. Since we will continue to work in the future, I'm grateful for Bobby's high level of domestic skills. One day, when we went to meet Bobby's family in preparation for our marriage, only my mother-in-law was there. It turned out Bobby's father had passed away a few years ago. Bobby had been living alone after his father's death, but moves back home to live with his mother. She isn't old enough to receive Social Security benefits yet. Having been a stay-at-home mom all her life, she's surviving on the savings left by Bobby's father, but that's going to run out at some point. Concerned about his mother's living conditions, Bobby moves back home and was providing her with financial support. That's why she seemed anxious about Bobby leaving home after our marriage. Although Bobby and his mom wanted me to live with them, I wasn't really enthusiastic about the idea. That's because all the acquaintances I knew who had lived with their in-laws didn't have successful marriages. Living in someone else's home, even if it's Bobby's family's home, might be stressful. I wanted to avoid that, so I was against living together at this point. When I gently declined the offer to live together, my mother-in-law seemed a bit down. Seeing that, I suggested renting an apartment near her home. That won't be so lonely. Seeing her look relieved, I felt a great sigh of relief. Bobby seemed satisfied too, thinking it'd be okay if he could continue to provide for his mother while living nearby. As for the money for his mother, it seemed to come from Bobby's salary, so I didn't intervene. Perhaps relieved, my mother-in-law seemed genuinely happy about our marriage. I can't believe my son is marrying such a beautiful woman. It's like a dream. That's very kind of you. You don't have to be modest, Sarah. You're a wonderful person. Her words were so direct, I couldn't help but blush. Thinking of her smiling face, I believed happy days were ahead. After we started living in the nearby apartment, my mother-in-law began to visit us often. She would arrive in time for when we returned from work, bringing takeout food with her. She'd come over for dinner 3 or 4 times a week, so we spent half the week eating dinner with her. Cooking after work can be quite tiring, so it was very appreciated to have meals already prepared. However, knowing she was struggling financially, I was a little worried about her frequently buying takeout for us. She said it was okay because she was also eating, but I still felt somewhat guilty. This situation with my mother-in-law lasted for about 6 months, but gradually I began to feel a sense of discomfort. Good evening, Sarah. Aren't you coming home a bit late? Do you think so? I'm working, so it's normal, I think. My mother-in-law gradually started to make prickly comments. Work is a good excuse, but you're a wife, right? Don't you ever think that you need to work a little harder on the household chores? She seemed annoyed that I was coming home at the same time or later than my husband. I manage because I'm the one who brings home the dinner, but you don't seem to cook much. Are you making proper meals for my son? I usually do. Depending on when we get home, there are days when my husband cooks too. That's how we share the chores. You have my son making the meals? What the hell? She reacted dramatically, and I was surprised by her vehemence. My husband has no complaints about sharing the housework. It's not practical for me to be the only one doing it. My wry smile and response seemed to rub her the wrong way, and she turned sour. Don't laugh it off. As a wife, you have to be more proactive in doing the household chores. Although my mother-in-law continued to deliver deli food to our house, I wondered if she was doing her own housework, but I didn't voice my suspicions. I've been delivering dinner to your place for half a year now, but you don't do anything for us. I appreciated her bringing us food, but I never asked for it. Besides, she eats what she brings over to our place. She doesn't wash the dishes we use, I do that, so she must have some leisure too. I thought she was being kind by doing this, but that wasn't the case. She was trying to find a reason to have me do the housework at her place. But I didn't actually ask for it. Don't repay kindness with ingratitude. Instead of saying unnecessary things, help out with our housework a little. I have a job, so that's quite difficult. You're so arrogant, even though my son earns more. Don't get carried away just because you're working. My mother-in-law probably doesn't know about my husband's income. Of course, I haven't even told my husband about my income, so she wouldn't know about it either. She was assuming from old thoughts that the man must be earning more. I was astounded by her outdated way of thinking and didn't even feel like arguing. At that moment, my husband came home. I'm home. Mom, you're here. Oh, Bobby, I brought dinner again today, but I'm going home now. You're leaving today? I always feel bad for having you bring us deli food. Thanks. Oh, and here's the money for this month. It's okay. Thanks for the money. Well then, see you later, Sarah. Yeah, see you. With that, my mother-in-law left, wearing an insufferably sarcastic smile. To make matters worse, she never speaks ill of me in front of my husband, Bobby. It would be easier to explain the situation if she did the same in front of him, but she doesn't. She always played the good mother in Bobby's presence. Despite thinking that Bobby might not understand my mother-in-law's true nature, I reported what she has been saying to me. Can we talk? What's up? Your mom has been quite harsh on me lately. Today again, she told me to come over and do the housework. Oh, really? I have my job and I'm tired every day, so when I said I couldn't, she got angry. Bobby didn't quite seem to get what I was saying. Well, my mom just cares a lot about you, Sarah. Maybe she was just being a bit strict. With a carefree look, he continued. She just wants you to be a good wife for me, Sarah. You should be grateful. Even after explaining what was being said to me, Bobby didn't understand. Far from it, he started to argue that his mother was right. He affirmed his mother's actions and didn't take my concerns seriously. Feeling that further discussion was futile, I decided not to bring up my mother-in-law anymore. Hey, Sarah! Is this apartment owned by your parents? My mother-in-law, who had come over to our house as if it were the norm, suddenly said this. With Bobby out shopping, she started whispering, which made me uneasy. In reality, we were living in an apartment owned by my parents, but I had never mentioned that to my mother-in-law. Yes, but how did you know that? I heard it from my son. You own other apartments too? I sighed deeply, hoping my mother-in-law wouldn't notice. I didn't want her to know, but it seems like Bobby had told her without thinking. It seems so, but the apartments belong to my parents, so I have nothing to do with them. That can't be. By the way, your parents must have a decent passive income, right? Judging from the way my mother-in-law was talking, I had a bad feeling. I'm not really sure about that. I have nothing to do with the apartment business. My mother-in-law seemed irritated that I wasn't engaging with her properly. Even after Bobby came home, she continued to wear a disgruntled expression.
Mom, what's wrong?
Sarah's parents, they own several apartments, right? I didn't know they had so much wealth.
Sarah, were you hiding this from my mom?
Bobby, too, started to blame me with this expression. Hide what? It's not even my money. It's my parents' money we're talking about. Right. Sarah, you said you couldn't help with house chores, right? You don't have to help, but could you increase the amount you send home instead? What? I mean, you're not even paying rent, and your parents have money. A little bit more won't hurt. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's selfish words. I pay my rent diligently, and I don't get any particular assistance from my parents. Yet here she is, trying to leech off my parents' money. My husband, hearing his mother's words, nodded in agreement.
That's true. It's not right to hog all the money, including that of our parents. Sarah, let's ask your parents to send us money.
My son, I knew you'd understand.
So, how much do we need?
Well, just a little bit is fine. How about $2,500? $2,500? My husband and mother-in-law didn't stop their outrageous conversation. At this rate, they might contact my parents and force them into sending money. To prevent this, I vehemently refused. I've told you time and again, I cannot send my parents money. As I raised my voice, my mother-in-law clicked her tongue. You have such a bad attitude for a daughter-in-law. With that, she left the house. After she had left, silence lingered between my husband and me. After a while, he broke it.
Sarah, don't you think that was a bit harsh towards my mother?
Instead of defending me, my husband sided with his mother. Why are you saying this too? It's impossible to think of paying such a large amount every month, right? Depending on my parents' money, the one in the wrong is your mother. Even as I said this, all my husband did was sigh.
Try to consider my mom's feelings a little. Anyway, I'm going to bed.
With that, he promptly went to bed. After that, my mother-in-law did not visit our house. She probably didn't want to see my face. Instead, she started calling often. The calls were always about sending money. You talked to your parents about sending money, right? I haven't. Why haven't you? You're such a useless daughter-in-law. If you don't want to send money anymore, I'll get you divorced. Such calls continued daily, and I was feeling down. I reached my limit and decided to talk to my husband. Bobby, I'm getting daily calls from your mother. She keeps insisting on sending money, and she even mentioned divorce. I assumed that he wouldn't choose to divorce me over something like this. But my predictions were completely wrong.
For heaven's sake, just give her some money. You're being too harsh on Mom. I can't love someone who can't appreciate my mom.
Excuse me? Bobby's response was the polar opposite of what I thought. His words made me come to my senses. I can't love someone who would defend his mother's greedy opinions over his wife. I completely lost all feelings for my husband, who sided with his mother till the end and arranged for a meeting with my mother-in-law. Oh, Sarah dear, calling me over to your house. Is there some good news you want to share? My mother-in-law was beaming, certain that I had decided to give her money. Well, it might be good news for you. I said that and showed her the filled-out divorce papers. I really don't want to send you money, so I'm getting a divorce, just as you said. Bobby said he can't love me anymore, so it's okay, right? What? Also, I'm the one on the lease for this apartment. Please sign the divorce papers quickly and move out. Looking at the divorce papers, their faces turned pale as a sheet. No way! I might have mentioned divorce, but it was a joke. I had no other choice because you're being so stingy.
I was kidding too. Don't take it seriously.
The two of them, desperate for money, were pathetically making excuses. Not a single apology was directed towards me. I felt nothing for these two who only thought about themselves. I see, but it was you who suggested the divorce, right? I just followed through. As they realized that I was serious about the divorce, the two of them started to get frustrated. All you had to do was cough up the money. I can't stand that self-righteous attitude of yours.
Cut it out.
Facing the two of them who started shouting, I showed my phone and said, I've recorded everything you've said. I might be able to get some compensation if I take this to a lawyer. Or should I call the police right now? Upon realizing I had evidence, they quieted down instantly. Realizing his fate, Bobby filled out the divorce papers, packed his belongings, and left, never to return to this house again. But my mother-in-law was a different story. After the divorce was finalized, I started living freely. Bobby moved back to his parents' house. My ex-mother-in-law, seemingly desperate for money, started berating Bobby, who divorced me. I sometimes ran into Bobby at work, and he always looked exhausted. She started stuffing my mailbox with papers scrawled with nasty words, and even scratched my apartment door. What is this? I'm sure it's her. I was enraged when I discovered this. The security camera had clearly captured my ex-mother-in-law's harassment. I didn't hold back and reported this to the police, providing the footage as evidence. The police, aware of my ex-mother-in-law's rants at home, promptly issued a restraining order. Of course, I'm also billing her for all the repair costs for the apartment. Living off her husband's savings, my ex-mother-in-law couldn't afford the repair bill and ended up making Bobby pay it. Feeling responsible for the divorce, Bobby is dutifully paying in installments. After this failed marriage, I had been pessimistic about love. However, 2 years after my divorce, I found a new partner. We were dating with marriage in mind, but I didn't want any money-related issues to arise later. Actually, my parents own an apartment building. I don't get any of the money, but my ex tried to force me to give him some, and we ended up getting divorced.
Wow, that's something. It belongs to your parents, right? How greedy can someone be? It's good that you got out of there safely.
Hearing my current partner's opinion, I feel truly relieved. Not everyone thinks like my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. I want to forget those past mistakes and look forward to starting a new chapter in my life.